very warm welcome to director Greg Berlanti.
Thank you for being here, guys. Thanks for coming.
Dan, can you also bring up the stage lights? Thank you. Wow. You make this beautiful, epic film with no sequel attached to it. I mean, not as a sequel, not as a franchise film, in the middle of the summer with bona fide movie stars. How on earth did this get made?
Scarlett Johansson. I mean, she was producing the film, as you saw, and she was attached to star in it. And it didn't start out as a theatrical film. It's kind of an interesting journey. So I got sent the script about 2 years ago, and it was a go movie. She was making it. She was making it in the fall of that year, and it was a summertime. And I really connected with the story. I'm a huge Apollo fan, which may be evident in the movie, and I love rom-coms. Most of the things I've done have been film-wise, have been rom-coms, or in that space. And so I thought, what a great opportunity to work with her, to work on something like this. And I went and threw my hat in the ring and got the job, and sort of were off to the races. And then when we started testing it about a year ago, we were bringing it around the country to test it. We made the film for Apple, who was terrific. And the response from the audience was very much resoundingly, we think this is a theatrical movie. And so they responded to that by saying, let's show it to a few theatrical partners. And Sony raised their hand and sort of anointed it as such as well. And then we were off to the races. And that was December, just last December. So as of, last November, I thought we were going to be on Apple TV Plus, and that's where we'd end up, and that was where I made it for. And so all of a sudden the stakes got raised considerably, and we find ourselves, Sony were the ones who said, we want to release this in July. I will say, when I read it, knowing that she was attached and knowing that it was an original story, it really did remind me of all the films that I grew up. I ran the video store in my hometown, and every week, we'd just get a new batch of movies that were big movie stars, original stories. You didn't know what was going to happen. They were a blend of tones. They were, just trying to be entertaining and say something. And so it was a very circuitous route to this moment, but that's where we are now.
Before we go back to the origin of the story, just because you just told us about the switch from streaming to theatrical, was there anything that changed once that decision was made about the film itself?
There were things that were in process. We did a couple of rounds of testing also with them, and they saw a lot of the same evidence that we did. There were definitely things that were already in process to changing. I was always taking movie out. I was always cutting. And the original draft of the film and the editor's assembly of the film were much longer. There's a whole mini movie of Jim Rash, which is well deserved, and I hope everybody gets to see it. But there was like 30 more minutes of stuff, and so things like that. Just little tweaks, but nothing vast.
Well, tell us about the story that this is based on, and I admittedly don't know much about the personnel at NASA in the 60s. So where does the fact and fiction meet each other?
Well, everything Apollo 11, the actual Apollo 11, the rocket and the moon landing, all of that is obviously fact. And so the historical fiction part of it is there was in fact a marketing team that was sent down there. It was a group of men. It was not one woman. But I think Scarlett Johansson trumps a group of men. And so that was sort of at the epicenter of that part of the story. And then, obviously we knew we were always going to go head on around this, one of the OG conspiracy theories, and that we were going to do it in a time that things are very politicized. But I felt like, and hopefully this is you guys feel this in the movie, but I felt it certainly when I read the very first draft, which is the third act, was so much about why the truth is important. And it was a really realized version of that. And I think there's almost, in a way, no better way to tell that, theme, or to use that theme than by looking at something that's been so, that is that these are vast now because of social media, et cetera, et cetera. And so we kind of just went head first at it. But I wanted everything that's real in the movie to feel as real as possible, since we were doing a movie about faking a real thing. And so, the tremendous amount of work went into, having to understand technically how it would have been faked actually in '69, and what you would need, what accoutrements would you need, what technical things would you use and need, and just so we could sort of, get the audience to want that to not be true, I think, is sort of why you're sitting there watching this incredible accomplishment. And so NASA was always a part of it. NASA, they let us shoot, we shot for about 5 days. There were double up days, but we shot a tremendous amount of our, I think more than any narrative films ever had Kennedy in it, we're in it. And so we were all over their campus, and we had to keep going down there to prep, and it was a very unifying feeling, which is, and you sense the sense of human accomplishment when you're there, and so we just tried to imbue the movie with that state.
At what point did NASA get involved?
Pretty early on. They were looking, it was always a kind of a courting process, as it is with anybody whenever you're trying to get, I think, anyone associated with something you're doing creatively. But they were looking at the scripts from before my involvement even, and giving their feedback and commentary. Again, I think they got that we really wanted to show the accomplishments of what was happening, but we didn't want to shy away from the fact that this is a very sort of popularized fiction now, and do both and hopefully do them
well. It's certainly, if they're involved, then they are along for the ride. But were there specific things that they wanted tweaked?
It wasn't. It was more like, this is how this would be said, or hey, if you're gonna, I think they were cautious around the Nixon jokes and things like that. But may have had one or two others in there that I pulled out. But no, it was, when you watch a rocket, if you ever haven't been, if you get the chance to go, when you go down there and you watch a rocket go off, and when we were shooting, and you're used to shooting and saying hold for plane, and then you're hold for rocket, and you watch this rocket go by, it's just so awe-inspiring and spiritual, and it is the best of us, and it's not politicized in any way. You don't get a sense of who's in what party or who believes what. It's just a group of people. Still to this day, I think very young, a lot of young people who are working to make the impossible possible.
Tell us, since this started with Scarlett, how you got to Channing.
Channing came on board around when I did, so I was coming on board, and there was that part was open, and so we started talking almost from the very beginning. And I have always wanted to work with him. I'm a huge fan. I think his dramatic skills are as strong as his comedic skills, and both of them, a lot of our cast, they have the capacity to do both, and to do both in an instant. And that made the set and the scene work terrific and fun, and not knowing sort of which direction you're going to lean toward, this way or that way. And we did rehearsals with everybody. I'm a big rehearsal person. And so we did about a week's worth of rehearsals where we ran a lot of the script and reworked, things and comedic beats and things like that. And and as they all came together, they kind of all, 1 + 1 + 1 = 100 at some point, and it was great fun. I think they had a lot of fun together, and I think that hopefully I just tried to capture that every day.
Well, tell us what it was like rehearsing with Jim Rash.
Jim was terrific. He was one of the first people I auditioned for the movie, and he came in, and the part was not developed, as it is now. It wasn't imbued with the kind of stuff he put into it. But he, from the very first scene, I said to him in his first audition, I said, okay, so this is, to Lance, this is a Broadway show. It is not the moon landing, and it's opening night, and you have to give a speech to all the people who worked on the fake moon landing, and tell them why this is the most important thing they'll ever do in their life. Go. And he just went, and I just started writing notes down and writing things down, and it was kind of very obvious, the part was born in that moment. That's sort of how I remember it.
There's so much nowadays that can be done, obviously, with visual effects, but there's also a nice, kind of tangible quality also to production design and the costumes and all that. Can you tell us a little bit about the research going into the things that you're going to physically create for the film?
Yeah, so again, to my ethos of like, let's make the real stuff as real as possible. So when we do the fake stuff, we're invested in the stakes of the movie. So, and I'd never done a period film before. So that was an exciting challenge, but also something that was very daunting for me. And I from the very beginning, Mary Zofries, who's our costume designer, is one of the best ever. And she dresses every background person herself. That's how detailed she is. And her and Darius Wolski, who plays the DP in the film and is the DP of the film. So I was auditioning DPs for the fake DP, and then we'd go to set and he'd be like, well, the light needs to be over here. And I was like, you know what, that's what I want in the movie. Will you just be in the movie? And he's like, no, I won't be in your movie. And I said, well, that's okay, and on the camera test day, I dressed him up and I had him do a couple of lines, and I just submitted that as the audition, and everybody was like, oh yeah, he definitely should be the DP. And that's how I ended up with an Academy Award nominated cinematographer to play the DP of this movie. But I think you have to be a little crazy like that, you have to, like, if you're feeling inspired about something, you just need to say it out loud. So. But he was a real maestro and teacher and mentor to me throughout the project. Of us, we looked at we got a hold of from NASA about 5,000, 6,000 hours of unseen, still unseen 65 millimeter footage. They so shot everything that was. If you've haven't seen the Apollo 11 doc, that was very inspirational for us in terms of even the look and the aesthetic in the movie. And I just listened to the director's commentary of that, and he mentioned a film historian who had worked on, rehabilitating the film, and so I called the guy up, and I was like, I just watched the director's commentary, and you're in it, and would you be interested? So he came on board, and he helped us restore some of the footage, and we had it on playing since prep, like just playing in the background, and we would use that aesthetically for this shot, or this moment, or this thing, and this detail, and so there's a lot of details and shots, and then we started to shoot it so that you kind of wouldn't know when we were obviously using their footage or when we're using our footage, and that opened up a whole expanse of material that we got to incorporate in the movie. And so that's just two examples but we would have weekly meetings, the production designer, Shane Valentino, myself, and Darius and Mary, like again and again, just about color scheme and what we were doing in the aesthetic of throughout the whole film.
Tell us a little bit about the decision to have Channing wear something completely different in the control room, because it's really pops with the...
Well, so everybody kind of in the movie is sort of a touchstone with someone real at NASA in a way, and so and it wasn't the launch director. There's a character who's been, he's been in many. A version of his character's been in many Apollo films and things of that sort. Named Deke Slayton, who oversaw the astronauts, and actually I think ended up becoming one of the last Apollo astronauts himself, and went to space, but had the same backstory and problem that we give to Channing. And his if you see those Apollo 11 docs, he's always just got a crew turtleneck and something stylish, and he just sort of pops out of the crowd. And I think it was really Mary's inspiration. I think that was for someone like him, and that was sort of how it came to that choice.
Is there any particular piece of production design in terms of recreating a historical period that you're particularly proud of or surprised?
The firing room where they launched the rocket. So whenever you see Apollo movies, you always see when Houston takes over, which is a totally different, obviously arena. And so we got to create the firing room when you go down there, and it's still it looks the same, not on the outside, not on the inside. It's all computers and people in hoodies and working on there. It's a totally different vibe. But when you go in there and we put it on, we recreated it to scale, every detail in there. The prop master worked for months on the headsets. Every light is the videos that were on the screens were the ones that were playing on the screens. We put the set on shakers, and when we brought in all the background, we shook the set. We launched the rocket. Everybody felt what it would feel like to launch those Apollo rockets the both times that we showed them in the movie. And so that set, I think, was particularly. We had a few people who had actually worked at NASA at the time, and were kind of blown away when they walked in, and you felt the reverence, I think. And the other thing that's such a fun detail, and it's true when you see the docs or you see the pictures, you know, the second Houston took over, they would all grab their binoculars and just, they were little kids looking at a rocket, you know, and they knew they were watching history. And so that turn of all of them for those kind of moments, and it is fun when you're down there, you know, you feel the sound wave hit you. You know, we cut it out of the film, but you see a little bit of dust from the ceiling. You know, the ceiling panels fell when the Apollo 11 rocket was launched. Like that's how close they are in proximity to where the rockets are blasting off. So that set, and that was playing while the same days and weeks right next door we were shooting the fake moon landing set. The fake moon landing set to actually be achieved with that kind of, you know, at that time technologically, we had to have, it was almost the size of a baseball field because the blacks had to be so far back they would fall off. And there was pretty much one light representing the sun. So we had one large 1969 Klieg light that would just burn out every 5 seconds. That was lighting the thing. And you know, the dust, I mean, just the moon dust we worked on for months looking to see so that when their footfalls would happen, the stuntmen are playing the astronauts. They worked with the choreographer for 3 or 4 weeks because I wasn't sure which section of the moonwalk I was going to use. So they did all 2.5 hours of the moonwalk. And so all of those are details that you know, we spent a lot of time on, and they were happening sort of back to back because the way we shot the moon set, it was easier to take it apart than to build it. So we had to start with it full, and we just kept reducing it and reducing it. And then as our intervals would go across to the you know, to the firing room and where they launched the rocket, and we'd go there and then we'd go back and forth and back and forth.
This film has such a beautiful mix of different sort of genre elements, from romance, thriller, comedy, historical. When you were working with the script, you know, was it difficult to blend the tones? Did it just sort of feel natural? How did you, I mean, in particular, the romantic comedy element, it's interesting to watch it play against sort of the thriller element and how well it works.
Well, I was always excited by the blended tones. I tend to be excited by blended tones. I just think it's more surprising and interesting. But they're always, you get asked a billion tone questions by people because not everybody sees those moments the same way. And the truth is, I don't always have all those answers. You know, sometimes I'm in post or I'm working with the composer and there's a moment that was always played dramatic that we find one little light touch for, and it's a comedic moment, and you're setting it, it's really about the contrast of the previous moment or the sequence itself. And so tone is something that I think it starts and ends for me with the actors. If you have actors who can do it all, the movie can go to all these places. Then it's the look and the aesthetic of the moment, and then it's the score all the way through the end. I mean, I think, and obviously the cut is a part of all of that, but the score for me is, we spend a lot of time. Daniel Pemberton is also a genius, but also I think was probably an annoyed genius by me. But we spent a lot of time going back over moments because, you know, you're always, you're looking at it in the totality and in the section but it's the most challenging part, but it's the part I enjoy the most, I think.
Tell us a little bit about your philosophy of score versus songs. I love the score too.
Yeah.
If there's a quality to it, I couldn't. What was the instrument? Because it reminded me of the music that plays on the Taxi theme song.
Right.
Sort of that beautiful. It's like a very simple.
Yes.
One instrument.
Yes. It's a 1969 instrument. I'm not a musician. I mean, the way I work with composers sometimes is I have to I can't play anything, so I have to whistle some part to change something or whatever. But there's a name for it, and I'm forgetting. But it's in the piano family, and it's a 1969 instrument. And so, look, there was the comedic elements of the film, which are more jazz. There were the more classical kind of elements, which are, you know, the sweeping love story or the NASA, you know, the reverence of NASA. But once we got to the moon, you know, it becomes a lot more modern because there's sort of trying to do anything that surpasses the sort of launch of the rocket itself and be in that musical world. It just didn't feel otherworldly. So we used it before Daniel Pemberton was even hired. I just kept using stuff by Daniel Pemberton, and I was like, well, this guy is so varied. I've got his stuff all over this movie. And then at first, you know, I've had this happen twice now with composers where they're like, oh, I'm too busy. I'm like, well, just watch the movie. And then they see their stuff all over it and they don't want someone else to do the job. So that's my little trick for you. If they ever do the movie, just use temp it with all their stuff, and then they're so competitive they have to beat themselves. And so he's like, oh, I want to do this now. And so that's sort of how we ended up working with him on it.
Can you reveal some of the magic in terms of the visual effects? Because it's sort of a film where you forget that they're used, because obviously so much of it has been done in, with the sets and the costumes. But what are some of the things that you couldn't do?
Well, I think there was, there's, I think like a lot of the movie, it's sort of surprisingly, there were a tremendous amount of visual effects in the film. I mean, we're close to 2,000 visual effects in the movie. And so, but my goal was always something in the foreground, build a big piece of rocket, build a big piece of this, have as much real stuff in there as possible so that certain things fall away. We shot a majority of the film in Atlanta in the winter. And so just the fact that you feel like you're in Florida in the summer for most of the film, shows you the kind of work of the visual effects artist that was happening for months. I think probably because of my work in television, I start that work very early. And so the second I start building sequences in production, I'll send them off to artists. You tend to carry on the shows and the film a lot of in-house artists, and their renderings are they're so terrific and they're so talented. And then sometimes you can give those to a house, and that will actually save you some money on visual effects because they see the thing that they have to do, and you don't get into this thing of after the fact, someone's got you over the barrel timing wise. And so by the time we were testing the movie, we had the first version of the film, we had a lot of the rudimentary visual effects, enough to really appreciate and understand the vastness of it, and then just more and more happens as you go along.
Tell us a little bit about the testing process. I mean, the fact that it went from streaming to big screen is obviously an incredible result, but what are the sorts of things you're looking for, and how did it help?
I think the vibe and the feel and the fun, if it's a comedy, just where are the laughs, and so tonight the movie's done and I'm like standing outside listening for where the laughs are, so like I could change anything. But you learn to, where's the breath, where's the thing, so you can sort of craft the next, that's a big part of it. I actually, showing stuff to audiences for me is where it's kind of all I'm thinking about almost the whole time is you guys and how you're enjoying and experiencing the movie emotionally, and so on the day, my goal is if I can find one or two things a day that excite me or make me laugh or make me smile throughout the whole process, in prep, when we're working on the script, in production, when we're shooting the thing, in post, by the end I have a whole bucket of pearls, and so, it's really just looking for having that one moment a day or 2 moments a day that you think, oh, that's great, that could be in the movie.
What was the hardest thing to lose?
There's still stuff I would lose. I mean, I just taking time out. It just I would say comedy is always, there's good there were great laughs, but that just, they're funny, but you don't need them. You gotta move on.
So tell us a little bit about bringing this out into the theatrical world. You're launching right in the middle of the summer. Do you have a ritual for?
Oh my God. No, I wish I did. Do you? Anyone?
My ritual is dropping my toddler off at daycare on Friday morning.
Okay, good.
And going to the matinee, first day the movie comes out.
That's great.
Only time I'm allowed to see movies other than when I'm here at work. I mean, you have kids, right?
I have 2, 8 and 5.
We're going to
Despicable Me tomorrow night.
You must be like the hardest working person in show business. No. I can't imagine doing this kind of stuff with
2 kids are harder than anything I've ever done in show business. For those of you parents.
All right,
they are relentless.
We're going to take questions from you guys, but we have a mic set up just so that the whole room can hear. So if you want to just line up, we'll take some questions from you guys. I should have mentioned this earlier, sorry. And you can move the mic, sorry.
Thank you so much. Hi, my name is Diane Sanchez, and I'm a USC alumni. And first of all, thank you. I want to just give you a big applause as far as a pearl of inspiration. It really, the movie, I grew up as a little girl, and I watched the Apollo. At home, we were all watching. It was just amazing. And the part where the rocket was taking off just brought me to tears. Reminded me of what it was like when I was a little girl. So thank you. That's all I just want to say. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I think 1 million people lined the shores of Florida that day, you know.
Hello,
Hi.
my name is Rachel, and I'm
Hi,
a
Rachel.
rising sophomore at the film school.
Hi.
Could you tell us more about your contributions to the colors the two leads were wearing throughout the movie? I was very interested in every time the color of Cole's shirt changed or how his dress changed. It was very interesting to me.
Well, thanks. So it was sort of a mixture of a bunch of things. One was very much, Mary and Scarlett both had a very clear vision of her wardrobe throughout, but it was always in concert with what the tone and the look of the feeling of the movie was going to be. And as a very sort of just rudimentary pass, Cole kind of goes from being the darker character to a lighter character and kind of opens up, and she kind of goes from being a New York sophisticate and kind of gets a little bit more and more real. She's got the sort of con man's arc of going from a liar to someone who sees the value of the truth. But the genius of someone like Mary Zafres is I would still be in post and I would realize stuff that she hadn't even said to me. That she had done for a character, watching an edit, whatever, maybe on the 5th time or the 6th time, and I would see, oh wow, she chose a blue there that I didn't even really notice, and that's why she did this, I think, and ... So, there's times where it's so much about, we had many conversations, and the lighting obviously is key, and the hair and makeup test, and the wardrobe test, and everything we were doing in prep to sort of see, just, for me, it's almost just a feel. It's just, I'm always kind of, my best guide for anybody I'm working with is how does a scene or a moment make me feel, and what's the sort of bumper sticker on the scene that we're trying to achieve, and does something eclipse that, or does it lend itself to that, and no pun intended. But I kind of wanted everything to support whatever the most important thing in the scene was that it was doing. Got it.
I'm Serafina. Thank you so much for bringing your film. It was so refreshing, and just to see something like this. I was wondering, if there was anything in particular that drew you to this film, and why it was important for you to make it.
Yeah, I think it was probably for me the more than anything the Apollo elements. I think the reason to go back, I had watched every documentary and every film that had been based in space, and I never thought there would be a reason to go back and look at it again. And then, I think there's reasons you say yes to things, and then there's reasons you discover while you're making the thing that you're like, oh, that's maybe why I actually said yes. And, I grew up in the 70s, and you could still, every day I was going to set, I was seeing some other artifact or some prop or some piece of wardrobe that brought me right back to my childhood. And I realized, that there was something gratifying about that and that moment for me. And in Scarlett's hair and makeup test, she came out and she just so reminded me of these early pictures I had seen of my mom, who I'd lost 6-7 years ago. And I realized, oh, her character so reminds me of my mom's personality and how strong my mom was in this time where she was surrounded by all these men who didn't see her, And so there were things like that happened throughout. But I think then my initial draw was, oh, I'd love to tell a fun, entertaining story in this space.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Mr. Berlanti. I want to say thank you so much for your film. It was wonderful. I don't have a question. I just want to say that you saved my life when you worked on Dawson's Creek. I was 12 years old. I was in middle school. I was in hell, and your show was there for me, and it gave me lessons and things I needed to know when I needed to know them before things got drastic for me. Obviously, I have a birth defect and I have a disability, but I related especially to Joey so much because of excuse my language, the clusterfuck that was her life, because I could substitute what she went through for what I went through. So I just wanted to come here tonight and say thank you for this, but I'm also here tonight because of that. So thank you for that.
Can I shake your hand? Thank you.
Thanks for making this movie, Mr. Berlanti. Is that how I say it?
Yeah, Berlanti.
Yeah.
Greg.
Greg.
Yeah.
Hi, Greg.
Hi.
One thing I like to ask first is the black cat. Do you know how that sort of screened its way into the movie story? If
Yeah.
you will?
Well, so I'm allergic to cats. Definitely allergic to cats, actually.
Did that play a part?
Yeah, so when I read the script, I was like, oh, shit. And so that's usually, sometimes there's always something in the script that you're like, I can't believe I'm gonna have to deal with this. So but there were 3 cats. I came away loving cats. These cats, they're all real cats. We never CG'd this cat. Everyone was like, you're gonna need to CG the cat. The cats won't do what you want. Every cat did everything I wanted. It was great. The only time we had to use CG was when he's in the rafters. We'd shot him lower. We shot it about 6 feet, and we raised it up so you see him in the full rafters. But otherwise, they were all terrific. Certain ones were better at certain things. They kept them outside and would bring them in when we were going to shoot. But and there was more of the cat in the movie. That's one of the things that we cut out. And so it was very obvious through testing we didn't need a little cat goes a long way in this film. And so, but it was nice. I think it's a nice, fun surprise throughout the movie. And just filmmaking languagey stuff like. Very much the cat reminded me of her character, and I was, there was a connectivity between them, and so musically there's sort of a connectivity between them in the film.
And I'd love to know, as you mentioned the script, how did it sort of arrive at your doorstep, and then how did that like day to day sort of like understanding?
I was
how that
working,
led you?
I had danced around another project with Scarlett that never ended up happening. And we had a good time getting to know each other that way. And she had enjoyed the last film I did called Love, Simon, and her team had enjoyed it. And so she thought of me for this. And there were other people that either circled it or talked to them, but I got the gig.
And then you went from that, and you sort of, did that immediately go into casting, or like production?
Immediately into everything. It was sort of like, I got the job in the summer, late summer, and we were shooting by Thanksgiving, and it was a big movie to prep. So I was prepping, and we shot, some of our exteriors are in Savannah, some are at Cape Kennedy, which I mentioned, and probably about 10 days of that stuff, but we did it more at the top. So we had to prep 3 cities, and we were doing work on the material just because you're always trying to make it better. And you're casting it, so that's augmenting things. So we were kind of doing it all at the same time, and that's where my work in television was really helpful, because you're just used to so much stuff happening at the same time. You kind of know that it can still all work out and not be as neurotic about it. But it was definitely a lot all at once, and but it all hopefully kind of came together.
So you worked on this almost 2.5 years?
2 years, yeah, 2 years. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Katie.
Hi.
Summer program.
Hi.
So as a director, how much of this project would you say is like your brainchild versus like Scarlett or any other major contributors?
Yeah, so I would say it's so collaborative. I'm always intrigued when I'm making anything, whether it's a movie or a show. I'm always curious. I'm always excited by who am I making the movie with, because that's kind of the Supreme Court. I know that's a tender subject right now, but that's what it's sort of the Supreme Court of the group that you're making it with is kind of your first audience and your first collaborators and everyone. It's my job to make sure the environment is such so that I can repurpose every great idea that day. And so I just try and create an environment where I get as many great ideas as possible. And I try and sort of what I alluded to before, which is for me, I think if I had to define the job as I see it, it's very much the conductor of the emotional experience. And so everything's sort of through that prism of just always every line of dialogue, every piece of music, every performance, every look, every feel. Like what does it all feel like together, and does it make me laugh first? Does it make, all that stuff? And then I'm very cognizant of the 5 or 6 people that I'm just around all the time making the movie with. So I see it as very, very collaborative. So I could go through every scene and say, oh, that's this person or that's that person, but I'm always asking everybody what they think along the way.
I also, this is just so small, but I noticed Channing Tatum only ever wore a green shirt, one specific scene.
Right.
And it bothers me so much.
It's fine.
And I noticed it's the mix between the blue and the yellow that
Yeah.
they kept going between. Do you know what inspired that?
I'd have to know which shirt you're talking about. I mean, it's usually the yellow shirt that pisses people off. It's just weird. I don't know. Some people have a thing that gets yellow, but it's the for him. I mean, in terms of like just things I would see on the audience cards, where I was like, wow, people really don't like that yellow shirt. I don't. You make a million choices every day, and sometimes you don't make you don't make popular ones, and you live with those choices through the movie, and sometimes those imperfections are things that make the movie more what the movie is, and other times are just things that will annoy even me throughout the rest of eternity. So but I try and catch as many of them as possible.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We let's just want to quickly say, let's keep the line where it is. I'm sorry, it just kind of exploded in the past couple minutes. And please just keep to one question so that we can get everyone.
Hi. Could you talk about working with the composer when it came down to determining the tone you wanted to set for the film?
Yeah, so like I said, Daniel Pemberton saw how I tempted. I mean, we're always using music throughout the whole cut, so there were different iterations of it. And from the very first time I see a scene, we're playing with different kinds of music. And again, sometimes something can work singularly in a scene, but you put it next to another scene or after a scene where maybe you use a piece of score or a song or whatever. And so we had 1,000 conversations. It went on for a longer period of time than we probably worked on the score for about 4 months on the movie. And I would make a lot of trips to London where he worked. And I like to, other people don't, they like are fine to get shipped something or audition actors over Zoom. I love to be in a room with people. I need to, so I liked to be in a room, like in his apartment actually while he was composing stuff.
Thank you.
You got it.
Hi, Greg. Great job. My name is Fanny. I'm a film director on the grad program here. My question is, you're making a very technical film about going to space. How do you balance it without losing the emotional through line of the story and flowing the characters? What was your process like?
I mean, just filmically, we wanted those to feel big, and so one answer to your question is the movie's a lot about moments that are big and moments that are small, and how do you not feel schizophrenic, and so I was really cognizant of making the small moments, the human moments, feel big, so that they would still feel like they're all kind of in the same movie. And certain moments that are vast, I would try and find the intimacy in that, and whatever, if they're the step on the moon or whatever the moment is, how can I reduce that down to something so that I knew in post, which is where I think probably because I've spent so much time in post in television, I'm always thinking about, well, what am I going to have in that edit bay when I want to play with something? And so, we tried to shoot the intimate scene, whether it's on a rooftop, the two of them talking. Obviously we're in 239, where it's a widescreen, and how can we make this moment feel as majestic as possible, even though it's an intimate scene between two people? And I think when you do that, that allows, and as you're figuring the movie out in part 3, and you're in post and you're putting it all together, it allows for you to sort of, I think, connect all the pieces together, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Makes sense.
Hi. So I imagine that working on set with Channing Tatum and Scarlett Johansson, two big stars in a comedy would be really, really fun, right? And I'm curious, as a director, do you think having fun and like kind of that whole energy on set reflects through the film?
I do. I really do. That's not true for everybody, maybe. And certainly I know of other sets and other shows that are like, not fun, and then the show's really fun or whatever. But for me, it's true. I try and create that familial atmosphere because A, it's just more fun to work in that kind of environment, and B, people will take risks and that you wouldn't see otherwise. And so, obviously I'm working with some of the best talent and most talented actors ever, and comedians as well. So from the time you yell cut, if you think you're going to walk over to them and come up with a funnier line, then it might come out of their mouth. Like I wouldn't do that to myself, but I'll very often say, I just don't think it's there, or let's maybe try something in this vein, or and just try and keep the spirit of play going, so that I can But conversely, I do a lot of prep work so that I can get there and sort of throw it all away. So I really walk through the scene as I would see it shot in my head 1,000 times, so that when I get there, if somebody has a better idea, I'm more open to it because I'm more prepared.
Okay. So sorry, just to clarify, you think the spirit of play helps make it better?
I think it helps make something better, yeah, and make it more fun. I do.
Great. I think.
Yeah.
Hi, thank you for the film. I really enjoyed it. I was interested in, given the subject matter of the film, how did you decide that you wanted the tonality to be so majorly comedic, which was very interesting to me.
Yeah, I would say that was the number one quality of the movie that grew and grew and grew while we worked on it, from the time I first got the script. It may be a drawback. I don't know. I enjoy laughing in the theater. I do so much TV where you can't experience it with an audience, and so laughter. The movies I've been drawn to have comedy in them, and I find myself looking for where is the comedy, where is the lightness in these things, throughout. And then again, when you cast people like Woody Harrelson or Jim Rash or Ray Romano, they're gonna come with their own brand of comedy even. And so I just try and let them run.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hello, my name is Kevin. I work in the space industry, so it's really cool to see another movie cover this topic.
Oh, cool.
So my question for you is, you said for the fake movie set you tried to use technology that you could use in 1969?
Yes.
Was there anything in the fake movie set that couldn't be done in 1969?
No, I mean, it's all, and in fact, we spent a lot of time, because I also didn't want to burn camera stuff in after the fact as much as possible. So a lot of that's all in camera. So when you're watching them, that's actually the camera that was used, and that's feeding to our monitor system. So when I'm going from monitor to monitor, it's all live in-camera stuff that was being shot. We had to augment a few just to the resolution on some things. It wasn't as clear as I wanted, because the TV sets back then were not as crystal clear and showing the images. But we were able to really kind of make it all. There was nothing that I can remember off the top of my head that we encountered that couldn't have been done.
So you're saying that fake movie could have happened?
No. No. I'll tell you a good point about that. That someone said to me when I was down there. One of the men who worked on the original program. He said, we spent 2/3 of the money and the time building the rocket that took people off. But nobody doubts that, because everybody sat there and watched the rocket go off. But that, as an engineering achievement and accomplishment, you're in the business, so was as incredible and impossible. And so it says so much, I think, about just who we are and people's belief in government, et cetera, as opposed to sort of, people know that was done, and that's not in debate. And so I thought that was a great point.
Thank you.
You got it.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Kaliste.
Hi.
I just have a crazy story, because that was crazy, first of all. Dope film. Insane. But I didn't know that Channing was even an actor, but he's been my friend.
Oh, wow.
For 3 years.
Oh, great.
We met at Janelle Monáe's house, and we kind of hit it off, and it was just crazy, seeing him act and putting two to. I'm looking at my phone that's him?
That's my friend Chan.
Yeah, I'm like, wow, that's crazy.
He's a great guy and a great soul.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, I do music, so I don't know. Yeah, thank you.
I like that story. I'll tell him you said hi.
Hello, Greg. I'm Braxton.
Hi.
I'm from Atlanta, so it was just magnificent to see this film. This was incredible. I wanted to ask you, what was the process of like just working with these talented actors? Like, I remember you were saying the key thing, rehearsals.
Yeah.
And, you know, just being in those rehearsals, what was like the moment just being with those actors and just trying to bring what you shown on the screen live?
I've found the best actors I've worked with, and so these are some of the best, most talented actors, certainly collectively the most talented group I've ever been around. You know, they all want feedback. They want direction. They want to be better. And they're open to it. And so I always find, as long as I'm, you know, I don't profess to ever have the answers. I just know what if I feel like we're still, I think it's my job to kind of know that we're still looking for that I still have a question of like, I don't think it's there, or I don't, you know, and I don't give line readings or anything like that, but I just try and keep fostering the kind of environment in place where we can all solve whatever the situation is together. You know, that is the collaborative part of the medium that is so exciting and fun. And, you know, and so the prep work I do is really for my own neuroses so that I feel like, you know, I can be prepared so that I can show up and be present and be in the moment, because that's what you're really trying to capture every day, is just that you don't even can undefinable thing of like what's electric about that. You know, it's like, just imagine the last great date you had or night out you had or whatever. It's like, how would you have captured that? You know, we went down to NASA and I walked around this place and I thought, gosh, you know, how do I emotionally capture the size and the scope, let alone technically? You know, we're on these wide cameras, and so I'm gonna have to be very cognizant of when we're going vertical and when we're going horizontal, and you know, and so I'm thinking about all the technical stuff, but it's really just so that I can be as much in the moment as possible.
That's awesome. Man, incredible film.
Thanks so much.
Just have just a couple of really quick things. Scarlett, does she just have those accents in her arsenal?
She can do anything. She was like a remarkable human being, and very, from the beginning, was, you know, my lead producer on the movie, and so trusting, and so, but yeah, she worked with a dialect coach for every single augmentation that she was doing, and you know, to be it when we were shooting her confessional scene as an example at NASA. And we go out and, you know, they're on a Saturday, they're like stopping their work on a rocket so that we can shoot the scene. And we have maybe an hour and a half to get this big confessional scene. And she just, every performance, every take she did was different every time. I could have made 4 different other versions of the movie with all the kinds of wealth of material that she gave me. She's really a remarkable human being.
Last thing, Colin Jost. That gets a laugh just from him being on screen, but the scene itself is funny.
That's
well.
I did that. I don't want her to get blamed or whatever for it. Like, you know, I just kept asking to be in the movie. You know, I think, but part the inspiration for it, you know, Victor Garber's a friend of mine. He's in that section too. You know, when those senators have to kind of come in, you know, I just didn't want it to be another section of a movie where you're like, here's this forgettable person, you know, and they have to come in and make a presence amongst these huge stars. And so, you know, you need people who can, you know, declare themselves. And he came in, he shot for just, you know, an hour or two, and he had so many great jokes and so many things we left out, but he was great.
Did Scarlett have notes for him?
No, she did not. She was like, Craig, you know, I was the one. I was like, oh, no, will he do it? Will he do it? Please, will he do it? She's like, oh my God, I can't believe you're asking him to do this. She was, I think, embarrassed by me.
All right, you guys have to go out and tell everyone to go see this movie in theaters.
Please do.
Thank you so much for coming.